You also have legitimate power. Legitimate power is how much authority one gives to an organization, how much legitimate power that individual has in that organization structure. You also have, under legitimate power, you have rewards to give someone, you have the power to reward someone for the work that they've done to incentivize them. And you also have legitimate cohesive power. Cohesive power in terms of being able to punish others or to withhold rewards. So, in terms of legitimate power, you have kind of like knowing information, you have reward power and cohesive power. And in terms of expert power, you have knowledge that others do not have. And expert power, you also have respect from others in terms of what they think of you and how they want to treat you. So here you have these. You have to explain these different types of power. And when we look at politics, well, politics is all about the influence one has in their groups over a set of people, and politics may derive. It's not really the same as legitimate power because you don't have any legitimate power. Whereas with political power, you can know someone, and because of your association with a boss high up, you can be deemed to have more power and exert more influence over people. And you can also have expert power as well. Expert power gives you more influential political power because if someone believes you have more information and knowledge and the skill to do something, then you would have more influence because you're more likely to be chosen to do that. So we can see that power and politics actually go hand in hand. So when you're explaining the politics and power, I would start off by talking about the values and then the values in an organization, and then move on to the power. The power being position power, personal power, and in position power you have legitimate power. Legitimate power being either how much authority you have, reward power to reward someone, and cohesive power. And then in terms of personal power, expert power in terms of the knowledge which you have, and referent in terms of how people see you and respect you. But in terms of the power, then it's who you know, the influences you have, and also expert power as well, because the expert power can put you in a political superiority in comparison to other people's. So you're more likely to be chosen to do that because you have the expertise in that, unlike someone else. So that politics and power, you need to explain it as well. So once you've explained politics and power within an organization, you now need to relate organizational culture to the performance of teams and individuals in terms of their behavior and performance. So if we look at the individuals first, or let's just go back to the question. So just to recap on the question, it says, analyze how organizational culture, politics and power influence individual and team behavior and performance. So we've covered culture, politics and power. Okay, and within the culture, also you have the values in there as well, the core values of different organizations. So now moving on to individual and team behavior. Well, obviously to understand how it affects individuals, we have to understand something about individuals in terms of motivational theory. There are different motivational theories like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We have the Douglas-McGregor X and Y theory, and we have Hertzberg's hygiene and motivational factors. But I'm not gonna focus on all of that because that is really covered in P2. So I'm just going to look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And when we look at individuals, how are individuals motivated? Well, according to Maslow, Maslow's hierarchy of needs said that there is a pyramid of needs, and in order for someone to be fully motivated to achieve and to be effective and efficient in the organization, they need to be motivated. But in order to reach the self-esteem, self-actualization type levels, you actually need to meet the lower needs. The lower needs being the psychological needs of food and water and warmth. The safety needs the next level up in terms of the freedom of fear and safety. The next level up, which is belonging needs, which is love. The next level up, which is self-esteem, being achievement and recognition. And the final level on top of the pyramid being self-actualization, inner fulfillment, in terms of what they want to do and where they're actually going. So, in terms of achievement and a recognition, someone's not really going to be fully motivated to achieve what they want according to Maslow, unless their basic needs, their psychological and safety needs and love, belonging needs are actually being met. Because Maslow said that you can't actually meet the higher needs unless the lower needs have been met. So coming back to the question, how does the organisational culture, politics and power, so let's look at the culture, organisational culture, how does that affect individuals and individual performance? Well, if the psychological needs and the safety needs are not being met, that basically means, they don't, someone in, we're using Sainsbury's here, so if we're looking at Sainsbury's, then if someone doesn't have a proper lunch break and they don't have too much time to eat and they're hungry, then they can't fulfill their job role because they're thinking about their stomach in terms of thinking about the task at hand. So that being the case, then someone's not going to be motivated to meet their higher needs if they're not getting lunch, or if they don't feel very safe, which is the next level up, safe and secure in their job. So if someone's not feeling safe and secure, so it's not going to make them feel motivated as an individual, and in terms of affecting their performance, it's going to not make them as productive as they could be, because their higher needs are not being met, and because their higher needs are not being met, they're not maximizing their potential. So that's one example in terms of how the individual is affected in terms of being less motivated, and their performance is affected in terms of being less efficient, producing less, because they're not as motivated, because according to Maslow, the psychological safety needs of they feel unfair of their job are not actually being met. I'm just giving an example here. So when you talk about the individuals, you will need to bring in Maslow. Well, likewise for the politics and power, if, say for instance, in the organisation, politics and power, and a politics where people were being recognised. So if you go into Sainsbury's, you get the notice board, Employee of the Month. But I've heard from some students who they know people worked in various Sainsbury's that the Employees of the Month are not necessarily the people who deserve to get that and to be recognised. And sometimes it's other people who feel they should be recognised for what they're doing, but they're not being recognised and they're being overlooked. And if this is the case, and if people are being overlooked, I'm not saying it is the case, but if it is the case, then that's not going to make that individual feel motivated to work, because of organisational politics and power by individuals who may overlook certain individuals who may not like the way an individual fits into the culture. If someone doesn't fit into the organisational culture and does it the way the culture does, then maybe that supervisor or manager may not like that person. They may overlook that person, and if they overlook that person, then they're not going to motivate the person, and therefore it's going to affect them because they're not going to feel too great in themselves, and it's also then going to affect their performance. So we can see how both the organisational culture, politics and power has affected the individual. So now we also have to relate to the organisational culture, politics and power to the team behaviour and performance. Well, we have to obviously mention something about teams and what affects and what makes up an effective team performance. Well, there are four basic areas what makes up an effective team performance, and these areas are the context, the composition, the work design and the process of the team. to achieve specific objectives. So the context, are there adequate resources, for example, or is there a climate of trust? The composition, you know, do the members of the team have the right abilities to achieve what they need? Is there the correct diversity, or is there the correct size of the team that is needed to achieve that objective? Work design, is there autonomy, skills variety, a task identity, knowing what that team needs to achieve, and the process, specific goals, and even conflict levels within the team with people working together. So we're talking about the context, the composition, the work design, and the process. And how does organisation culture affect that? Well, organisational culture will affect it, depending upon what type of organisational culture you have. Is the culture, task orientated? Is it aggressiveness orientated with a sales kind of focus? What type of organisational culture it has? And depending upon the organisational culture and the different types of teams that you have, could affect that team performance. Because if you have the wrong people, if you have a sales team, for instance, and they're all about achieving specific sales targets on a daily and weekly